Nobody knows that they saw it, but they did.
If people want to get a message to you and don't want you to have to think about it or have to make a decision on your own, to actually weigh pros and cons, the morality of something, the immorality of something, then probably subliminal program will come in extremely handy. People who want to go through their day without having to make those decisions, without wanting to worry about, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Someone telling them what is right and wrong takes away a lot of the burden. It gives them, plenty of time to sit around and watch American Idol.
Does this guy think I'm a fucking scientist or a rock star?
Serpents and scorpions to confront this being.
Certain simplistic notion of what subliminal advertising does. We hear that implants buried in the images, invisible to the naked eye, get us salivating like Pavlov's dog, something like that. That's largely mythology. Now, this is not to say the advertising industry wouldn't do that if they could. And in fact, they're always studying that kind of thing to see what they can come up with.
The predominant trend in modern subliminal advertising seems to be sexual assault or sexual violence. And this is an example of that. If you look at her facial expression, it could be that she's finding it extremely unpleasant. And the person on the left seems to be violently ripping her necklace from her throat.
Well, it reinforces the idea that women are victims. And that it's sexy for a woman to be a victim. And that's very powerful and very important to maintain status quo in our culture. And that's how you can convince men also that she deserves to be violated. She wants to be hurt. She's, look at her. Look how she's dressed.
The really interesting thing about the picture is that there is a fourth entity that you're probably not aware of. If you look at the black space between the guy on the right and the woman, there's sort of a demonic shape formed there.
It isn't that the cues, the stimulants, are invisible to the naked eye. They're entirely visible. It's just that we don't recognize them for what they are. So the most notorious example of this would be the Newport cigarette ads, which on the face of it simply show happy couples frolicking in the green and so on. But you realize after a while, after you look closely, that these are really sort of sadomasochistic dramas, that either the man or the woman is in fatal control of the situation. So that would strike me as a good example of a subliminal pitch. It's all right there on the surface. We just don't know that the surface is, in fact, exactly what it is.
Subliminals of various sorts, or subliminal cues, and communication on an unconscious level can be used to shift people's consciousness in various ways. The classic example is when we tell people, don't think of a blue monkey. Okay? What did you have to do to not think of a blue monkey? When you bring up a concept and then negate it, you actually have to think of the idea, right, and then cross it out, right? So when you use negatively phrased language, then what happens is that you actually get the people to do what you're saying don't. Okay. In New York State, the tobacco industry was required to create an anti-smoking campaign, and they put up these huge billboards all around that said, "Don't smoke, don't smoke, don't buy cigarettes all the time," kind of things. And and I'm sure they had people who were familiar with these language patterns working on this stuff to get to use this campaign to sell more cigarettes.
Otto Potzel, who showed people pictures for very brief periods of time, and then analyzed their dreams, and discovered that although the pictures were flashed too briefly for them to be aware of consciously, they often dreamt about them later.
The laws didn't pass anywhere in any state because of what I believe was a deliberate disinformation campaign designed to make the public feel comfortable. We don't use it, and if we did, it wouldn't work. In front of you is a manual. This manual was sent to me and is a training manual of one of the largest advertising agencies on the planet. And this training manual, in a very sophisticated way, lays out several ad campaigns that have actually run. Major products, how they embedded both taboo imagery, devils and whatnot, and sexual imagery. So, not used, I know that is just flagrantly false.
Advertisers just can't admit it. They're not going to say they embed, phalluses in cigarette ads.
They just finished upgrading it from 48 antenna to 180. The thing about HAARP is an instrument designed to do exactly what Persinger was talking about, which is this idea of modulating the ionosphere in a way that can be used for weapons applications.
What are the effects of bouncing a wave like that off of the ionosphere, do you think?
Probably very minimal. It probably goes up and mostly goes down.
It's like punching the ionosphere, and every punch of high frequency causes the ionosphere to vibrate in harmony. That converts the ionosphere from direct current to alternating current, and then it behaves as a giant broadcast antenna, pumping the signal back to the Earth in the ELF range.
According to the PSYOPs Mind War document mentioned earlier, the effects of ELF, or extremely low frequency waves, on the human body has been connected to both physiological disorders and emotional distortion. Infrasound vibration up to 20 Hertz can subliminally influence brain activity, inclining an audience toward everything from alertness to passivity, and could be used in conjunction with media broadcasts as well.
And you get what's called a frequency following response, an FFR in the literature, or brain entrainment is often referred to in that way. And this is where the brain actually locks onto these external signals, even these very, very subtle signals. It locks on and begins to mirror. And so the brain patterns fall into those patterns, which is a change in emotional state.
Subliminal messages. You talk about subliminal.
Is there any way you can call that something else? I mean, it's not a telescope, it's not a Leaning Tower of Pizza, it's a penis.
The idea of violating free will is something that even God doesn't do. And yet man thinks they can do this.